What do I do when I'm being held emotionally hostage? So, kind of what I immediately think of is I can really only be held emotionally hostage if I'm allowing it. And this is part of like the rebuilding the parenting self-esteem of like taking the power back. Like this is my home. This is not your home. This is not your room. Like this is my home. One of the things that we talk about a lot in my climbers group, or that I talk about a lot with the parents that I work with, is this thing that I call jading, which stands for justify, argue, defend, or explain. You don't ever want to do that with your kid. If you catch yourself in the moment doing any of those things, justifying, arguing, defending, or explaining, you've already lost, because you've signed up for a ticket on the crazy train and your kids got you because they're in their master manipulative bag. And so the more that I'm able to recognize that, and my awareness grows as I develop some of these new tools and some of these healthy habits, very similar to the kids, then the better on guard I can be against that. And I can choose to not jade, or I can remove myself from the situation, or have some of the dudes come pick up my kid to get them out of the house, or whatever. But at some point, if I'm taking care of myself and I'm working my program, you can only hold me emotionally hostage if I allow it. That would be a boundary of no, I'm not going to be held emotionally hostage. This is going to be my way or the highway. This is on my terms, and I don't really care how you feel about it. It's not my job as your parent to be liked by you. It's my job to steer you. It's my job to hold you accountable and really hold you responsible for your behavior. And if they are trying to hold you emotionally hostage, well, then that's dishonest and manipulative. So you've got, 2 bullets right there in your gun that can be fired immediately as far as your shots and consequences. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, sure. For me, empathy is a good trait, but it's like almost everything, it needs to be kept in balance, and that was a lot of my undoing pre-recovery, was syncing myself to my daughter's emotions, and or the emotions that she portrayed, which she learned to portray whatever emotions got her what she wanted, learning humility and my place in the family, which was not above or below anybody else, but in the circle with everybody else, helped me learn to detach with love, and that helped give me the clarity to be able to unsync my emotions from my daughters, and that was really a huge key for me in beginning to be able to do things differently as a parent. So the question is, what do I do if I feel like I'm being held emotionally hostage? For me, it's surrounding yourself with the people in this room. When I would sit at coffee and listen to someone, whether they were sharing a story about how they conquered that, or whether they were sharing a story about how they battled that, it's a lot easier for me to understand someone else's plight and apply it to myself than it is for me to just, in a vacuum, introspectively look at myself. Because I had done that for years and got nowhere. It was really surrounding myself with people who were a little further ahead of me in the program and people who were a little behind me in the program, hanging out at coffee, hanging out at events, going to climbers. Climbers is like the master class in how to detach with love and that kind of thing. That Cornerstone step 2, surrounding yourself with people who are headed in the same direction you want to go, is the key for me.
So I actually can remember this scenario, the emotional part, being held hostage in our home meant that at the beginning of our journey, when we were just getting started before we had Patrick placed in a host home, I was always jading with Patrick. We would just get into these stupid arguments about whatever, it didn't matter. But during these periods before he became sober, we physically had to remove myself from the room, and that meant my husband would usually leave the room first because he followed everything he was learning immediately, and it took me a little bit because I really wanted to. I thought I was empathizing and wanting to explain to him why this was going to happen this way. And I remember there was one situation where we were all in our master bedroom, like that included the girls. And it was just the weirdest thing ever. It was like there was a tornado happening outside of our bedroom. And I remember my son knocking on the door, like, I have to talk to you, like, you have to listen, like, this isn't gonna work, then I'm gonna do this or that. And we were all just huddled and listening, and I realized, oh my gosh, like, this is done, like, it's another level of care has to take place. Something else has to happen, right? And that's when we looked for Joe, we got help. But removing yourself from the situation, leaving the room, leaving the house. Today, if something happens and one of us isn't functioning properly and this happens, my son will catch himself and he'll stop and he'll realize, ooh, I've lost my temper, sorry. He'll remove himself. He'll go downstairs, cool off, come back upstairs and make amends. Things are very different today, but in the past, when we didn't have any tools, we didn't know what to do, all I could do is remove myself from the situation and call my sponsor, literally, like, this is going on, what do I do now? Okay, take a deep breath, and there's a plan, right? You have a plan, you have your shots and consequences, it's okay. You're not the first parent to deal with this, so there is a way to handle it, so.
Can you say what jading is?
Oh, God, okay, so I'll give you an example. Patrick would be like, why? Why do I have to do this? Like, why do I have to go to the meeting? Why do I have to, and you would stand there and have this dumb argument with him. Well, I want you to go to this meeting because it's gonna be really good for you and you're gonna meet all these new friends and you're explaining to him. And so you're what was it, justifying yourself to him. You're arguing, which, I'm really good at. I've already forgot what it means. Defending and explaining. Yeah. I'm doing everything a parent should not be doing because I'm just supposed to be his parent. I'm supposed to be the person that he goes to. I'm supposed to be the lighthouse, right? I'm supposed to show him what he's supposed to be doing, well, by example, but also by working my own program and by giving him direction. And like Joe mentioned, he doesn't have to, I don't have to be his best friend. I'm his mom. I have to help him work his program by holding my boundaries and allowing him to get stronger by doing that. And if he can't do it, then I have to hold my boundaries and let him go. But the jading was something that I was doing the whole time, but I didn't even know what it was. It just comes natural. It just comes natural for me to do it, and I was the weaker link. So I was doing it, and it was like a hurricane. It's the worst thing ever, and all your decisions that you're making while you're being held emotionally hostage these are decisions that are made out of fear, and they're not good. So you can't function that way.
So I know I can speak for myself, and it's probably true with a lot of parents, but probably one of my worst problems in early sobriety was emotions dictating actions. And whenever something happened that scared me or hurt me or that I didn't like, I couldn't accept, and I would, have an emotional response to my parents. and sometimes I would be consciously manipulating them or unconsciously manipulating them. If my parents, bit, it was over, like either a Band-Aid would be put on the situation or I would walk away. We would both walk away, feeling even more distant from each other, So with my parents, like, my mom would hit me with like, no is a complete sentence, and I hated that for the longest time. Because it's like ego crushing, you know what I mean? Like my parents would be like, until you pay taxes, you don't get a vote. You know what I mean? Like I am a 50-year-old woman, you know what I mean? You are a child, like I don't need to have this conversation with you. And it's like, takes the wind out of you. You know what I mean? You're like, all right, well, I guess I'll just go to my room. There's nothing you can do in that situation. So when you take that emotion out, when you start to learn to respond rather than react, and if you're acting out of like principles and instead of how you're feeling, it's like I don't know, it can mediate a lot of damage.
Yeah. And I'm just gonna say one more thing to that, and then I want you to start with the next question. But your kids are looking for you to have a backbone. Like that's part of the parenting self-esteem and work in our own programs. Like your kids are looking for you to have a backbone. They're wanting to be led, but they need to have something to follow. They generally look to their parents first to be led, and they got to learn how to hear the word no. And that goes in line with being able to have a backbone. Like sometimes they just want to hear no. They don't want to have these long drawn out discussions with y'all. They just want to know what the boundary is. They want to know you're in charge. Like 3 things that kids want to know. Who's in charge? What are the rules? And will they be enforced? That's what your kids want to know. And when they know those things, then that creates some emotional safety and trust and consistency, which is, it's just really hard to grow in any kind of way, but especially emotionally in an environment where there's not consistency and there's not a lot of safety or trust.